Hey everybody! We're doing this again. We're doing another live stream. Um, Thanks for coming. This is something that is kind of new for me. Well, I did it a long time ago, but it's fun. I am sewing some fun things, and I actually feel a little bit more excited to sew on nights when I know, or days when, on times when I know that I'm gonna have people with me. So it's super exciting. I've got my laptop right here so that I can respond to your comments. I hope that we get some chatters here. Let's see here. So tonight I want to bind a quilt with you. This is a quilt that I have had finished for months now. I took it off my long arm months ago, and I thought it would be a fun thing to bind a quilt together with you and show you the method that I use to bind quilts and kind of show you my process. I know binding quilts is something that some people find tricky. Maybe there are other people like me that procrastinate binding their quilts. So if you also procrastinate binding quilts, then we're in the same boat. And tonight I'm going to do it. I'm going to bind this quilt from start to finish. Uh, I already, I already cut my binding strips. So I used 2.5 inch binding. Sorry, I used to use 2.5 inch binding strips, and then I switched to 2.25 inch binding strips, and I really like the smaller amount that my binding folds over. And I'll show you everything. 2.5 inch strips are probably a little bit easier to use, but I use a nice tight 1/4 inch seam allowance when I'm sewing the binding on, and then I wrap it around to the front. I bind my quilts entirely by machine lately. I don't have time to hand sew the binding on. So, hey Brenda, thank you for joining us tonight. And thank you for getting my emails. You know, my So Can She newsletter. We've been doing that a long time, and it's really fun to send you guys new ideas in the emails. And I get lots of good feedback about that. So I love it. Um, so we're going to bind this quilt entirely by machine because I don't have time to bind uh, to bind by hand. Oh, hi, dog rescuer. Hi, Michelle. I'm glad you're here. Again, you've been with me, I think, every time that I've live streamed, I think you've been with me. So thank you. It's like I have a friend in the room. I know I have lots of friends in the room. I know that a lot of you guys have been reading my blog and for a long time, and I really appreciate that. It's allowed me to do all the supporters that I have on SoCanShe.com has allowed me to buy some amazing sewing machines and have this studio that I love. So thank you to everyone who has been with me throughout the years. Man, I started in 2011, so we're coming up. I started in December, so we're coming up on 13 years of So Can She. So, hey, Chrissy. You've missed me. Okay. Maybe you joined me on a past live stream. Thank you. Connie. Connie uses 2.5 inch binding. That's great. Hey, Julianne from Montana. So glad you're here. 2.5 inch binding is great too. I just started wanting a smaller amount of binding to show on the front of my quilts. So that's why I switched to 2.25 inch, and I get the look that I want. But it is a little trickier. You have to be straighter when you're sewing on the seams. There's less room for error. And so I will say there's a little more unpicking, but it is what it is. I really don't mind unpicking, this is my philosophy on unpicking your sewing. Things happen in life that we wish we could hit the rewind button. I'm sure you all have had moments in life where you did something or someone else did something and you want to hit the rewind button and you can't. But with sewing, you can hit the rewind button. It's just your seam ripper. And whether you have to, sometimes it's worth it for me to unpick for an hour because my mistake was just unacceptable. And sometimes I just have to unpick for a minute, and it's that rewind button. My seam ripper is that rewind button that I don't have in other areas of my life. And so that's how I think about it, and I don't mind unpicking mistakes. Okay. Oh, Connie wants to see the quilt. And okay. So Wendy is going to bind her first quilt too. So hopefully I'll give you some ideas. And just by watching me do it, you'll pick up some tips and tricks along the way. So I do have a camera right here in front of my machine. So I'm really hoping I'm just going to have to go slow to make sure that I don't mess up my camera setup here with this big-ish quilt. This quilt, so I posted a link to the free pattern that I used. It's not one of my designs. I'll show you. So finally, I'll show you the quilt. So this quilt is not one of my designs, but it is, let me just make sure that all my streams are going well. Huh. Okay, good. I think all the streams are going well. So this quilt is the quilt that I did. I went on a Stitch in Heaven cruise with my sister back in March. And this is the quilt that we made. It's a free design that is on the art gallery website. And I found it's easier to find the pattern somewhere else. So I put a link to that and you can see what the pattern looks like. Stitch in Heaven was providing kits for this, but I have this stash of Liberty fabrics that I have been not wanting to cut into for years and years. And so I just thought, okay, here's my chance. I'm going to cut into my Liberty fabrics because the quilt pattern is beautiful. I knew it would turn out beautiful. So this is the quilt. It's really good. And I'm going to do my best to put the binding on here without messing up my camera setup. So we'll see how it goes. All right. So to start with, I have cut all of these. Okay, I'm going to switch here so you can see what I'm doing. I have cut all of these 2¼ inch strips and 2½ inches fine too. If you're just getting started binding quilts, you probably want to start with 2½ inch. I've cut all these strips using my AccuQuilt machine because they do make a strip cutting guide that's 2¼ inches. So that's really exciting. And it really, they have one that's 2½ inches, obviously. And I had that one. I had that one for years. One of the first AccuQuilt dies that I ever bought. And then when I really started binding all my quilts with 2¼ inch binding, that's when I went ahead and bought the die for 2¼ inches. So let's get started here. Okay, so first what we're going to do is join our binding strips together. And when oh, thank you. Captain Critch loves the colors. Yvette, thank you for reading my blog. I really enjoy helping people. So, okay. So, first we're going to join these binding strips. And it would be perfectly okay to join your binding strips like this with a straight seam. There's nothing wrong with that. We are not the quilt police, and we are not going to criticize anybody's quilts. But when you join it like this, it creates like you're going to wrap your binding around and around the quilt, and that will create like a lump right here where your seam is. So, in order to avoid that lump and make the binding stronger, we are going to make a fancy little 45 degree angle like this to sew the binding together, and then when it all folds and wraps around the quilt, it's not doesn't create such a big one. So, to do that, I'm gonna push these aside, and you can see here on the screen, this camera right here is my pressing area. So, this is my pressing area. I've got my tiny little Aliso iron here, and you're gonna be able to see everything I do. So, let's go ahead. So the way we do this, and once you've done this quite a few times, you'll come up with a way, just your own method. So I always lay uh, the strip on the bottom here, like this, and then I lay the strip on the top like this. Now I have to be careful because I've got a little bit of selvage here. This fabric is a print. It is a motive print. It's a motive grunge color. So it prints all the way to the selvage here. I'm not too worried about that, but it doesn't print all the way to the selvage on this side of the strip. So I'm just going to overlap it a little bit like this. And then I'm going to sew from here to here. And you can draw a line if you want. I'm just gonna sew. I'm just gonna go for it. It probably won't be straight, and that's okay because there's no quilt police here, right? If you're the quilt police, please don't leave comments. So, I'm gonna go ahead, gonna turn on my little laser light so I know where I'm gonna start sewing. I've got the 1/4 inch piecing part on this, but you can take it off after a few minutes. But it was just the foot that was already on my sewing machine, so I didn't. Okay, so there's the first line that I sewed, and I'm going to bring it over here. I'm just gonna do it right here. So just to get ready for pressing, I'm gonna go ahead and cut this, cut off this extra fabric for a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And you'll see right here, we've got that seam that we're trying to get. So easy peasy, right? And I'm gonna repeat this 8 times because I needed 9 strips of binding for this quilt, or at least I think I'm gonna need 9 strips of binding. So we'll see. So I've got 9 strips to sew together. So I'm going to just put on the next one and sew it in the exact same way. All right. So I just wanted to remind everybody, let's see here. Feel free to ask me anything. Put your question in the chat. So I'm using matching thread right now in the top and the bottom, and it is a gray that works really well with this. Um, when I go to sew this to the quilt, I will sew it to the back of the quilt first, and then I will wrap it around and sew it down on the front of the quilt. So when I do that, I'm going to put it in my bobbin thread that matches both the back and the front of the quilt. Just use a neutral color. So tell me, if I keep doing these live streams, is there a time of day that would work better for you? Because I've done 2 in the middle of the day and 2 in the evening so far. Curious. Hi, Kimberly. Hope you're having a good night. It is possible to sew these together wrong. And if you do, just unpick them. Or, quick tip, if you sew these together and they're wrong, so I always, before I cut off the seam allowance, I always just take a quick peek like this to make sure that I sewed it right. And then I cut off the seam allowance. But if you pull the strips apart and you find that they don't make a straight line, so you somehow sewed them wrong, you can unpick it or you can just cut it off and try again. That's my first tip today. Just cut it off and try again. Okay, Math Geek says this is a good time. Jay says this is a good time. Oh, Michelle wants me to make the casserole carrier. So my newsletter this morning had featured my casserole carrier pattern, and the special thing about it being featured that if you go to that blog post on my website and scroll down to the end of the blog post, you'll be able to download the PDF of that pattern for free just today because it was a featured tutorial. And the only people that know what is the featured tutorial every day are the people that get my newsletter. So that was the featured tutorial today. If you want my newsletter, just go to socanshi.com and click on emails at the top or in the menu bar, and you can sign up for it. I think you can sign up for the page too. Anyway, so Michelle asked if we could do a live stream of that pattern. That sounds like a good idea. I'm also thinking of doing some machine embroidery. I have some requests for machine embroidery. So I think that would be fun to do some machine embroidery. Well, I'm glad this is a good time for people. Okay, this is the last strip, and we're gonna have to fold it and press it. So, okay. So now I'm going to switch the big camera to my. Oh, before we get started, I feel like a magician pulling out like a scarf from a hat. Okay, so before we get started, I'm going to switch to my little walking foot, my sewing machine, because I find better results if I use a walking foot when I am sewing on binding. And that's just my personal preference. There we go. And with this machine, I have to tell it that I have the walking foot on. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to switch us over to this. And what I'm going to do is press the seams open and press this binding in half. Yay, Brenda is watching on iPad. Because she says that she's watching with earbuds. Your comment is so good because that's exactly what I do too. I love to, um, I love to watch K-dramas. If you don't know what a K-drama is, it is a Korean television show, and they are all over Netflix and even Amazon Prime TV has some, K-dramas now, and they're just so engrossing. So, I will be watching my K-drama on my iPad with my earbuds in, so everybody else can watch whatever they want. Alright. Oh, Julianne's watching while she makes dinner. Yeah, that's why Jay, that's why you need to use the earbuds. You can't hear anything else. Those big ones, those big Apple the big Apple ear muffs, yeah, those are really great. It's hard to hear anything while that's going. Oh, my daughter keeps telling me to watch Attorney Woo. I'm gonna have to watch that. Right now, I am in the middle of, Hotel de Luna, so enjoying that one quite a bit. So right now my job is and if I was at my big ironing board with my big iron, this would go a little bit faster. But right now my job is just to press the seams open and press the seams open, open, press. Oh, Wendy is working on she's working on my space art quilt. I'm glad to hear that because to tell you the truth, that Starship 3-yard quilt pattern has not been one of the most popular on my website, but I had so much fun making that. I mean, I guess because I live in Florida, close to Cape Canaveral, we're just space crazy around here, and so I had so much fun making that. Just kinda, like, didn't do great. Alright. Hi, Wendy. Let's see here. Oh, yeah, Brenda likes true crime shows. That's good. Yeah, something like that is good to watch while you're sewing, because I can't watch K-dramas while I'm sewing because I don't speak Korean and I have to use subtitles. So, yeah, can't watch those while I sew. Let's see here. Oh, thank you about the grunge fabric, Brenda. I am such a huge fan of grunge fabric. And there's really I know there's a lot of blenders out there that, like, try and copy grunge. I don't think any of them are as good. At least I haven't found any that are as good as Moda grunge. 'Cause it also is, like, soft. It feels great. These strips are here, I'm gonna put your comment up so everybody knows. These strips are 2¼ inches wide. It is just fine to also cut quilt binding strips 2½ inches. That's what I used to do. And then and 2½ inches is actually really good if you are, using the hand sewing method to finish your sewing it to your quilt. There are 2 methods to sewing binding on a quilt. One method, the method that I used to use, is to you sew it to the front of the quilt and then you flip the fold around over to the back and you hand sew it down on the back. So then nobody can see any stitching on your binding and it's a really professional finish. Now, when I got super busy and I started making more and more quilts, then I decided to just machine sew all my binding. So I was machine sewing all my binding on, with 2.5 inch binding, and I was finding that so when you machine sew it completely, then you sew your binding to the back of the quilt and you flip the seam over to the front, and then you sew right or you flip the fold over to the front, and then you sew right next to the fold to fold it down or to sew it down. And doing that, I found with 2.5 inch binding that it was just making a little more binding on the front than I wanted showing. So I switched to 2 1/4, and I'm really happy with it. But it is a little trickier sometimes, especially around the corners. You have to be really careful with your seam allowance when sewing it on. Okay. Oh my gosh, you guys know each other. Oh, that's so funny. I see that Map Geek and Shelly Clark are chatting with each other. That's so funny. It's like we really are in a big room together. All right, so if you're logged in, tell me in the chat box what width strips do you usually cut? Are you a 2 1/4 incher like me, or are you a 2.5 inch strip cutter? I'm curious. And I totally understand both. So no judge. We have no quilt police here. So for people who just joined us, this is the binding. I have to show you the quilt. For people who just joined us, you're gonna love this quilt. You're gonna love this quilt so much. Okay, I love this quilt so much. So I'm hoping by extension that you all love this quilt so much. This is my May Meadows quilt. The pattern is free, and I put a link in the comments. And I cut up my Liberty fabrics for the first time, so it's so soft and beautiful. Anyway, so this is what I will be sewing the gray binding to, and I think it goes. I think it goes. It doesn't detract too much from the quilt. Just goes with everything because this gray binding has some blue in it. So, all right, let's keep going. We have it more than halfway pressed, so just keep going. We'll just go down. All right. Yvette says that she also, let's hold on. I have a lot of comments here. Okay. Oh, Shelly and Matt Geek are friends in real life. Susan, that's hers 2.5 inches. Uh, yeah, sewn on binding is better for, it's stronger. I agree with Brenda says that machine sewn on binding is stronger. That's true because the first quilt I ever made um, was a queen size quilt for my daughter, and I had read online that the proper way to sew on binding is by hand, and so I did it. And about 10 years later, that binding was completely coming undone. And so, I mean, isn't that sweet of her? She's still using my quilt 10 years later. So I just took that quilt and sewed the binding on um, with the sewing machine. 'Cause seriously, sweet Chloe, still using my quilt. I made it for her when she was 8, and she's now 19, going to college. But at least she's only like an hour and 15 minutes away. So I still get to see her. She comes home about once a month. It's so much fun. Let's see here. Okay. So it looks like most people use 2.5 inch binding, and that's awesome. Yes. Yes. If you do have a hard time folding it all the way around and getting your stitches covered, then 2.5 inch or even make it a little wider. I mean, go easy on yourself. It's gonna be you should enjoy the quilting process, and at the end, have something beautiful that you made, but you should enjoy. Alright, we're getting there, we're getting there, almost done with pressing this binding. I love how it has this grunge fabric has a little bit of blue in it. So, this is Moda grunge fabric, and I cut 9 strips, which required almost 3/4 of a yard. So if you decide to make this cool pattern, you should know that you're gonna need 9 strips. Well, we'll see. I might have a strip left over. I did kind of I guesstimated so the quilt was 75 by 87, and I knew that I would need at least 2 strips for each side, so I cut 9. 2 for each side plus a little extra. So for sure, I'm gonna need 9 unless, Motor Grunge is kind of wide, so I didn't measure it, but this is at least 42 inches wide, so maybe I'll have enough. We'll see. What do you predict? What do you predict? Am I gonna need the ninth strip that I sewn on, or am I gonna end up with too much binding? That is the question. Okay, so the binding is all made. I'm gonna switch you over to the sewing machine view so that you can see what I'm doing. I'm gonna cross our fingers so that I don't bump the camera too much as I'm sewing this on. All right, so here comes my big, beautiful quilt. I have got my walking foot on my sewing machine, like I saw you do. So there's always the question of where to start sewing your binding on. And it really doesn't matter. A show quilter once told me that she always starts and finishes her binding and joins it at the top of the quilt in case the join in her binding is a little bit messy at the top of the quilt. People aren't going to see it very well because it's at the top of it's way up high in the show. Now, I generally don't make show quilts. I have, but this is not a show quilt. So it really doesn't matter where I start. I just like to start not too far from a corner. And I am gonna have to go slow because I don't want to bump all my cameras here set up. So I'll just go slow. So here we go. I'm gonna sew it to the back first, and then wrap it down to the front. That's what I said, right? I said I would sew it to the back first. So here we go. So this quilt, just so you know, I long armed it. I long arm quilted it, and then I took it off and I trimmed it. The way that I trim is I just put it on my floor with a big cutting mat and I square the corners and then I cut in between the corners. So we're gonna sew this on with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and I'm gonna leave like a good 6 inches at the beginning, at least, so that I can join my binding. And I want to sew it with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Move this over to where my 1/4 inch seam allowance is. And this foot has a little line right here. That is the 1/4 inch. So that will help me. And I don't need to have a super short stitch length, so I'm going to increase my stitch length to like 2.4. When I'm quilt piecing and when I was sewing these pieces together, I usually use a shorter stitch length, like 2. It's harder to unpick, but it helps my pieces stay together, especially with something like this. that I'm going to be, you know, moving around a lot before it's sewn on. So I was using a two setting stitch length before, but now I moved it to 2.4 because that's not necessary for this. And the binding is sewn on twice. So when I flip it over and top stitch the binding down, I'll probably even increase it more because it's sewn on twice. It's gonna be nice and, you know, tight. So here we go. I didn't backstitch because just in case I need to pull this out a little bit, in case, just in case. I didn't backstitch. Didn't need to. So let's do this. Not going to be super fast. And one thing I can do, and one thing I often do, especially this is a thin quilt. So I didn't switch to my lighter. I did not switch to my lighter thread color. That's going to be okay because I'm sure that I'm going to be able to wrap this around and cover the stitching. Because this is a very thin quilt. If I wasn't sure, then I definitely want to have matching thread color on. But I'm sure I'll be fine. In fact, I'm going to just like move this back a little bit to give me more room. So I'm sure that it will be okay. And I'm just going to go ahead. Hey, Carrie Quilts. Yeah, that's a good idea, Jay, to make sure beforehand that there are not going to be any seams in the corner, because that is unfortunate when that happened. And since I didn't check, well, the pressure's on me. I hope there's no seams in the corner. I mean, I'm sure I can handle it. I'm sure I can make it work. It just might be a little lumpy and not my best. So that's a very good tip. Here, I'm going to put this tip up here. That's a very good tip, is you could like clip your binding all the way around or just check, run it around with your fingers and make sure that you aren't going to have any seams of the binding at the corners. So cross your fingers for me that that won't happen, but even if it does, I'm all right. All right, great tip. Thank you. And I'm trying my best not to bump this camera. As you can see, I'm not going too fast. I am concentrating on this 1/4 inch seam allowance. That is what is going to make my binding a consistent width on the front of the quilt. If my seam allowance here was wonky, then I would not have a consistent width of binding on the front of the quilt. Oh, you know what? How is the sound? I don't think I never put on my microphone. See, still learning. I never put on my microphone. So I really hope that you've been able to hear me. Did that get any better? Yeah, Carrie quilts. Carrie says sometimes she gets seams at the corners. It happens. I mean, I would be if I was making a quilt for a show, but maybe Captain Chris will tell me how the sound is. I can always count on him for. Okay. I told you that the camera was gonna get in the way. I put the camera right here because you I was see. I were watching a live stream, but it's easy if they're little projects. But I didn't think about what it would be like for such a big project like this quilt. Okay, look at. Oh, we're not there yet. All right, we are lucky with the first corner. It is, there are no seams. It's far away, like the middle of the strip. So far, so good. Whoa, Captain Critch said the microphone might be too close. Captain Critch is my husband. Well, it's right here on my neck, so I can't change that. I like, nah, I'm not going to change it. Okay, so as we approach the corner, I'm going to go until I am approximately a quarter inch away from the corner. And now there's a little step that is optional, but I do find it helps. I'm going to turn so that I'm sewing at a 45-degree angle. There's my stiletto. So I'm sewing at a 45-degree angle right here. I'm going to sew right to the corner. And then cut my stitches. And that helps me to fold this at a perfect 45-degree angle. And I'll just finger press it down, 45-degree angle, and then I'm going to fold it over like this. And one tip that I share with new quilters is to go ahead and take your clip, so you don't have to like use 10 hands to hold everything down. So I'm going to turn the corner and then I'm going to start sewing right here at this edge, right at the edge, quarter inch seam allowance, and just go down this. I'm going to take my wonder clip off. Having a knee lift on your sewing machine is a wonderful feature because, as you saw, the knee lift enabled me to raise and lower my presser foot without using my hands. But that's expensive. So we're just going to keep on sewing. Okay, Brenda, I hope the sound is getting better. And Jay is cheering with me that probably she's cheering with me, I imagine, that my seam was not, I did not have a binding seam at my, there's 3 more corners to go. We'll see how it is. Keep on sewing, keep on trying to keep an accurate quarter inch seam allowance. All right, Carrie Quilts also. Hi, Jetlu. Carrie Quilts also sews up the corner like I just showed. You don't have to do that. You don't want to really sew straight down past your quarter inch because then it will be hard for you to make the 45-degree angle fold if you sew all the way to the edge. But it's just one of those things. You can do it or not if you like. I won't do it on this corner, and then we'll see what the difference is. How about that? So I'm arranging the quilt here, trying not to bump the camera. So, how many of you have ever been to a quilt retreat? I would love to know. I would love to know. And I would love to know Like, when you go to a quilt retreat, do you like to go to the kind that has, like, teachers and patterns all planned in advance? Or do you like to go to the kind that is, like, just open so time, and you bring a whip, you bring a project, or you start a new project and you work on whatever you want? Let's see here. So tell me, because I love quilt retreats. I've only ever been to, well, I haven't been to that many, but I've only ever been to the kind where there's a teacher and project all ready to go, all planned for this, and we just work on that project. But I do have one. I think I have one set up for next year. I'm I'm planning to go to one next year where I'll just have open sew time. So I'll work on Jet Lou likes to go to both kinds. Shelley Clark has been to many retreats. Glad to hear it. Quilt retreats are so much fun. I've only ever been to one where I did not have fun. I don't really want to talk about it because I don't want to name names. Retreat. It's kind of a famous, I don't know. I think it's, who knows? But I did not enjoy it. It wasn't my Stitch in Heaven cruise. Holy cow, I loved that. I was with my sister. It was a blast. Shelley Clark likes to bring her own projects because she doesn't need to start anything new. True, true, true. That's why I have always tried my hardest to finish projects at the retreat because if I know that if I bring it home, or I suspect that if I bring it home, I am. There was one retreat quilt that I just gave up on. It's over there in my whips. Carrie quilts. Hasn't been to any yet. She'd want to bring her own projects. Oh, interesting. Retreat. Our interesting pivot method, Jay. Let's see. This is what she said. So we'll see. I'm not sure I understand that. So backwards off the edge. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I think I understand that. That's interesting. Okay. Brenda says that she's having a day retreat locally. Mary hasn't been to any yet. Yes, Carrie, I agree. It depends on what the projects are. Because if I didn't like the project, I might still go. There's my own stuff to work on. We're finally approaching our second year. What do you think? What do you think? Am I going to have a seam at my corner? Shelley Clark is going to a summer sewing camp with friends in a couple 21st year. Your 21st year of the same sewing retreat? Oh, wow. Well, I've been going to a kind of local retreat. Oh, by the way, look, you must have been crossing your fingers for me. We don't have any seam at this. So far, 50% good. 2 out of 4. No seams in the corner. This time I'll show you the other way that you can that I have done it. Anyway, oh, I'll tell you in a second. So I'm gonna go till I'm 1/4 inch away. And then I'm just going to cut my thread, and then I'll fold it. I mean, you don't have that little bit of stitching right here to help you know that you're getting the 45-degree angle, but you're getting a 45-degree angle. So it's pretty much the same. Use my little Wonder Clip. Now we got to turn this huge quilt. Okay. Okay. Here we go. I'm going to back here so that's extra secure. Ongoing. Already turned 2 corners. We're making it. So, there, for any of you that live in Florida, or any of you that want to come to Florida, there is this cool retreat that happens twice a year. It happens in March and September, and it's just a 1-day long retreat, and it's a mystery quilt retreat. And the woman who runs these retreats, her name is Jerry Stubbe, and she is so funny and adorable, and she's the kind of person that makes everyone feel welcome. And she's also the opposite of the quilt police, because she makes it doesn't matter what mistake you make, she'll just like act like you didn't make a mistake. So she's not paying me this. I'm just saying I'll probably go to my like 6th retreat of hers or 5th retreat of hers this fall. It's like 3 hours from my house, but I don't mind it. And I also don't mind driving because it is held at this hotel in Sarasota, Florida, that is called, the name of it is the Carlisle Inn. Not working really. And the Carlisle Inn, I think it's an Amish-owned hotel, which sounds weird, I know, but it it's a quilt-themed hotel. So there are quilts hanging on all the walls, and the decoration in your room is like quilt blocks framed, really pretty Amish-style quilt blocks framed. So I love this retreat. I love the hotel, so I always stay the night before and the night after, because after a whole day of retreating, so I stay the night before so I can get in there nice and early, and then after so that I can have a break and rest. So we're getting there. So what is your Carrie quilt? Panama City. I know where Panama City is because I used to live in Mariana. You live in Panama City. You know that Mariana is about halfway in between Panama City and Tallahassee. So, which means, I don't know, an hour away. So, not an hour away from Sarasota. In order for someone in Panama City to get to, it's kind of far. It's far. How are you? Florida's a big state, everyone. Like, people are like, they're always surprised when I tell them how big Florida is. If Carrie lives over in Panama City, I mean, I'm not saying she does, but for someone who lives in Panama City, you have to drive all the way over to I-75, which I think would be about 3 hours, probably. And then you have to turn south and drive all the way down to Sarasota, and you'll probably have to hit the turnpike along the way, which means traffic, or I-4, which is predictable traffic. So you're looking at like probably 7 hours. You don't want to drive 7 hours. So even if you had to catch a connecting flight that went like Panama City, Orlando, Sarasota, I'm sure you'd still save time. Oh, you live in Maine. Okay, Carrie Quilts lives in Maine. I wasn't giving away any private information. Yeah. She said, "Oh, I'm trying to be really sensitive." Okay, so yeah, Panama City has beautiful beaches. Everything up on the panhandle of Florida has gorgeous. And actually, the west coast of Florida has really. I live on the east coast of Florida, so we have beaches with big waves and gritty sand. But the beaches on the west coast of Florida have small waves because it's the Gulf, but they have some sugar sand. All right. Let's see here. Brenda says she goes with friends, a 6-hour drive. Wow, that's vacation. And Carrie thinks, yeah, you should come. You should come. I should put a link. Let me put a link to because it's kind of hard to find. Let's see here. So I'm going to put a link to the retreat. No pressure, everyone. It might already be full. It's number 6. And I started going to these at number 2. So I guess it will be my 5th one. Hey, Wendy in Seattle. She grew up in New Jersey, coming down here to Florida on vacation. Yeah, people who live on the East Coast, people who live I love to go on vacation to New York. I haven't actually one time we did drive all the way up and we went to New Jersey. And from New Jersey, it was a summer trip where I took my kids. I took my kids by myself, 4 kids, on a road trip up to New York. We saw the Statue of Liberty, and then we turned and we saw Niagara Falls, and then we turned around and we hit North Carolina and went whitewater raft. I think about this now, and I'm just like, what was I thinking? But we did it. We did it all. Okay, look. No seam on the third corner. So I am at 75% good. I think my chances are really good to not hit any seams. All right. Let's see here. Yes, Carrie, feel free. Anybody, if you have a favorite boat retreat that you think we might want to know about, feel free to put a link to it in the comments because I will definitely go through this after we're done and look at all of them because my schedule's kind of booked, but I always love another retreat. So feel free. If you have a favorite retreat, it's not like a guild retreat where only guild members are allowed or anything like that. It's open to everybody. Put a link and we will all check it out. I will definitely check it out when I'm done. So I didn't use the clip this time. I'm just crossing my fingers, holding it on tightly. One more corner. Let's go down a little bit. Hopefully make it easier for me. All right. now you're having a look at the back of the quilt, which, by the way, can you see this beautiful fabric on the back of the quilt? This is um, speckled. It's a Ruby Star Society print called Speckled. Is anybody else a fan of the Ruby Star Society Speckled? It comes in both 42-inch wide and it comes in 108. And I was lucky enough to find this 108-inch wide piece on sale somewhere, and so I just snatched it up. It's a good neutral color, and my stitches just blend in perfectly. All right, we're getting there. Oh, I was going to show you. So once you start sewing a binding on, I will often do this when I'm sewing about 12 inches of binding on. You can pull it from the back and check and see how your seam allowance is. So I'm not even holding it that tightly, and it's easy for me. There's my stitching right there. I'm sewing it on, and it's really easy for me to wrap it around to cover my stitching. I don't even have to hold it that tightly. So that is really because this quilt is pretty. This quilt has wool batting in it, which pushes down pretty well. And then it also is pretty densely quilted, so it squishes pretty flat. And that's fine. I love wool batting. Wool batting is perfect for Florida quilts. It's super lightweight. You don't get a really heavy quilt on you, and it keeps you warm in our terrible Florida winters. Seriously, my bedroom does get so cold in the winter because my husband used to turn on the heat. I didn't have the heat on. Oh, he's probably watching. He's going to say something. Oh, Wendy came to Wiki Watchy. I think that's where the mermaids are. Is that where the mermaid show is? They're girls. They're girls dressed up as mermaids and they swim in this river. It's really funny. Yeah, did you see mermaids? And Brenda says hers is the Compass Center. Oh, no. I will look it up. Anyway, what was I saying? I forgot. So I'm getting ready to go to Quilt Festival this year. That will be fun. I am invited to Quilt Market, which is the few days before festival. I'm invited to go to Quilt Market as a media. We plan on me writing about it. So I haven't decided. I'm definitely going for market. I've already booked my hotel room. I'm trying to decide if I should go to the festival or if I should come back and spend Halloween. I don't even think my kids are going to dress up anymore. They're teenagers. Oh, yes, Wendy. The mermaids are still there. So at Wiki Watching, like kind of well, now I'll tell you what it is now because I went last summer. It's kind of a hokey amusement water park on a river. So you don't get to swim in a pool. Oh, there might be a pool. Is there a pool too? I don't think there was a pool. There might have been a kiddie pool. But all the main swimming goes on in this big pool at the bend of the river. And then kids you can rent a tube or a floaty and float around on this little river they've made. And there's a water slide. There's a big water slide, which my kids had lots of fun with their cousins. So there's also this mermaid show where you go inside this building, which is a huge relief because it's air conditioned. And we were there, it was like 100 degrees outside. So we stood in line to go in and see the mermaid show, which is just girls in swimsuits. Might have even been and They breathe through tubes, I think. Anyway, yeah, it's really hokey, but it doesn't cost very much. So it was, and the river really is beautiful. Thank you, Brenda. Brenda said she loved the quilting on my quilt. Thank you. Look, the fourth corner, and we don't have a seam. I lucked out. Yes, and I might not need the ninth strip. Oh well, I'll save it for something else. Okay, and so I'm 1/4 inch from the corner. Turn, so off the corner. Then I'll fold it this way. I think this is a really good thing to watch live or just watch a friend find a quilt because you have to see this technique 4 times and it'll help you remember. Okay, so there we go. Oops. Be fine. All right, I just have a little bit more. Got one of my hairs in it. Oh, I'm so excited to finish this quilt. I think it's not like I have a king size bed, and so it's not really a bed size quilt. 87 by 75. That could totally be a twin size quilt. So on my king size bed, I'll just put it on my lap. I'm not my husband to find something else. I'm a terrible wife. We are getting there. Okay, so I'm gonna watch, and when look at this. Here's the seam. Here's the seam in my for the ninth strip, and I didn't even need the ninth strip because I have plenty. Okay, so I'm gonna sew until the more room you have in between where you started sewing and where you stop sewing temporarily to join your quilt lining, the more room you have there, the easier it is to finish sewing it. So I like to do it where I have like around 8 inches. So here is where I started sewing. Also a little bit more. Might make it tricky, but this quilt is already so bunched up that I don't have much room up here to work with anyway. Okay, so here's my starting piece. And you can see right here where I started. It's really close, just off the camera. And I'm going to stop right here. I'm not going to backstitch. I'm just going to stop and cut my thread. I'm going to turn this around. And you can, so there's 2 ways to join your binding. One way is to bring the binding together in the middle like this. Then and then you finger press these 2 seams, and then you cut a 1/4 inch past where you see you finger press. And then you can sew those together, but I'm sure you can see what happens here. Then you get a straight seam. You're gonna wrap around your quilt and have a lump there. No, it's just one. So that is just fine. I joined the binding on my quilts like that for years. Carrie says doing all doubles on separate quilts. Okay, I'm not a terrible wife, I guess. Okay, so that's one way to do it, and that way is perfectly fine because we are not the quilt police, and I actually did that for a long time before I finally made myself memorize this way to do it. So this other way to do it, you need something you need to measure, or you need a measuring tool to help you measure 2 1/4 inches, the width of your quilt, or the width of your binding. Yours will be 2 1/2 inches, 2 1/2 inch binding. And because we sometimes forget what we're even working with, this is my next tip. just cut off the selvage or cut off an inch. So here we go. I've got a little measuring tool that is 2¼ inches wide. And if your quilt was 2½ inches wide, then yours will be 2½ inches. I'm just straightening. So I'm going to, and this is really close. This is too long. I'm gonna cut off a little more. Okay. This I'll use for ender leaders. Okay. So I'm gonna overlap these, and I want to overlap them by this much. So I'm gonna smooth this down. Then smooth this down. Okay, I don't want them to be loose or tight. I want them to just lay flat. And then I'm going to put this on here until I can see that my two strips overlap by this much. I mean, you can put your ruler up here if you want. Now I don't have to remember how wide my binding is. Okay, so my two strips, the one on the bottom and the one on the top, they overlap by this much. And I'm gonna lift this up and just cut it off right there. So I use that little piece too as my measuring tool to see if my binding strips overlapped by that much. Perfect. Okay, now I'm gonna pretend that I was sewing this binding on just like I did at the beginning. So I'm gonna pretend that this is my binding strip that comes from this direction. Remember I said that I always like to lay one in this direction and lay another one this direction? So here's my binding that lays in that direction, and then here's my binding that lays in this direction. Because they're short, bring them together like this. Okay, and then what I would do is I'd turn it like this, and I would sew from here to here. The way that you can double check to make sure, 'cause if you sew it from here to here, that's not gonna look good. In fact, I can even show you. So I've got a pin here. If I accidentally sewed from here to here, 'cause I mean, that looks logical, I'll put a pin in and we'll flip it back, and you'll see that, that's not gonna work. That's gonna make binding that goes weird. So I can put a pin in here, and I can see, oh, look, if I sew that seam, it'll make my binding just perfect. So turn this. I'm gonna get the quilt out of the way, and see, I already pinned it, so that's great. I'm gonna get the quilt out of the way. Over here a little bit. I'm gonna often it helps to fold the quilt in half. And I'm gonna sew this in the direction of the pin. And because I'm in a bunched up space, and um, because I didn't leave very much room in between starting sewing and ending sewing for this, it's really bunched up, but it's okay. So now I'm really hoping I'm doing this right, because it would be just my luck that it's wrong. That's why I have an end picker. Okay, so I'm just gonna sew down to this little corner right here. Cut threads. And then comes the moment of truth. And I did make a mistake. Look at this. I twisted it. I twisted it. How did I do that? How did I do that? No, I can't just cut this off, because then my binding will be too short. So let's try again. No, I don't think I've ever done this before. But probably it's because I'm on camera. I'm trying too hard, but I twisted it. Thank you, Penny. Okay, we're gonna try again. Somehow it got twisted. Like this. And I'm gonna do it again. That will work. Okay, take two. If I do edit this video for later, of course, that won't show. Take two. And it's nice and straight. So, of course, oh, but look, it's loose. See, the reason why I think it might be too loose is look, this slipped. But it feels good. I'm just gonna leave it. I might have a little bump there. So I just cut this to make a 1/4 seam allowance. Oh, thank you, Math Geek. Thank you for making me feel better. Here, Sweet Math Geek said, I've definitely done that before. Thank you. You're the best. Okay. So, okay. Carrie. Yep, that's good. That's awesome. Okay. So here we go. Now you see, you can take this to your iron if you want. I just finger press that. Okay. And because I do have a little bit, it's a little bit loose, I'm just gonna like stretch my quilt from the back. And we're all good. We're all good. We're all good. Hallelujah. We're good. It's sewn on. Okay, instead of taking this entire quilt off my table, I am just going to flip it over a little bit so we can start sewing the binding on the other side. And I'm going to change my bobbin thread. So here's my bobbin and the gray thread. I've got some pretty cream colored thread on a different bobbin. There's not a lot of thread here, but I think I have enough because I just have to go around the quilt once. So I've got my bobbin thread here. I still have the gray thread on top because I'm going to be sewing on the binding. So just a recap. We're going to wrap this around to the front of the quilt, and I'm going to top stitch right next to the fold here for beautiful binding. And on the back, there will be a line of stitching just off the binding for the most part. And that's why I put the cream color thread in, because it's going to match with this color right here. So let's get started. Doesn't matter where I start. If it was a show quilt, I'd start on the top of the quilt. Is there, well, if it was a show quilt, I'd be hand sewing this down, but I don't do many show quilts anymore. So fold it around. And if you want, some people go ahead and use Wonder Clips and clip this all the way around. And the benefit of that is you can sew faster because you are taking the clips off instead of wrapping your binding around the whole time. But you have to take the time to put on all the Wonder Clips. So your choice. All right. I think I will lengthen my stitch length to 2.5. Okay, Brenda, let's see what Brenda does. Brenda says, I sew about a 4.0. Very good, very good. I love all your tips. I love knowing that I'm not the only one who does silly things like that. Good. That's why your unpicker is like a rewind button, and I love it. Okay. And Math Geek says, I like that idea. Okay, let's just go. This is the last step. If your sewing machine has a little laser light, this makes it a little bit easier to keep right on the edge of the fold. We're not the quilt police, so we're not going to judge where they sew their binding as long as it is sewn down. Oh, goodness. All right. really like this color of binding. The gray is such a nice neutral blue in it, goes with the blue on my quilt. Aren't these Liberty fabrics beautiful? The only fabric in this quilt that is not a Liberty is this one, and that's why I put this on the back because I've got the same speckled fabric here and here. And then, of course, the binding is Moda Grunge. All right. So Carrie says, I like to clip the first few 10 inches to get started. Yeah, that's true. That's a good thing to do. I like that too. And as you can see, with the walking foot on, I sewing the sewing the binding down is a really smooth process. When I was before I switched to only sewing binding with a walking foot, occasionally I would the binding would just like push this way and it would create kind of wriggly binding. So that's why I use a walking foot with all of my all the binding steps except when I'm sewing the strips together, which at that point it really doesn't matter. I might already have a walking foot on when I'm sewing my strips together. Oh, Michelle. Thank you, Michelle. Michelle says she pins the binding in place and does a decorative stitch. That would have been really fun. Oh, that would have been really fun, especially if I put in like a thicker weight cream color fabric here and did it um, and like a blanket stitch. It would have been so good. Okay, next quilt. Next quilt I bind, that's what I'm gonna do. Because I have done that before. I just forget because I get yes, math teacher. I love showing your comments. I hope you don't mind. I'm using a different streaming software, and so some of these features are different, and I hope you don't mind. I think it's cool. Okay, so I've got my sewing stiletto. I'm going to smooth this out towards the corner and kind of like iron, stiletto press that 45-degree angle. Look, I've got a thread here. Make sure that you don't have all these any extra threads. Okay, and then I'll fold that over and I'm just gonna sew right until I catch that fold right there. There we go. Now, I took this sewing class, I took this quilt making class, and the instructor insisted that we sew the folds down on our binding. This, like sew the corners down. Have you ever heard of that before? I mean, yes, I can see that it makes it stronger, but never even knew that was a thing before I took that class, and the instructor insisted that we do it that way. So, have you ever heard of that before? Okay, Carrie asked if I do the quilting myself. Well, I do, but I have a long arm, and this is a long arm design, and it's a robotic. So first I got a long arm, and then I added the robotics a little while later. I do enjoy freehand quilting, but I can quilt quilts a lot faster, obviously, when I use the robotic system. So I use that almost exclusively now. And this is a design by Carly Porter. She has these really cool designs. So almost all, not all, but most of the designs I use lately are Carly's designs. Okay, thanks for asking. Jay, thanks for asking. Go make dinner, it's kind of late. Jay said the quilt is beautiful and she has to go make dinner. Well, yeah, you better. Um, I'll see you later. I'll see you later. Um, let's see here. Brenda says, "Judges will ding you if you don't sew the binding down." So just the way that I did it, or do they mean obviously, they probably mean hand sewing that little corner bit down. You wouldn't wanna do it with stitches that show. So thank you for that bit of information. Are you a quilt judge? Okay. Yes, somebody else said that. Matthew said her friend got feedback on her show quilt that they should have stitched down the mitered corners. Well, I guess that teacher was right. I would not wanna do that with I don't know. It seems weird. Okay, I'll do it. I'll do it. Although I would not enter this quilt in a show now that I've been sewn the binding. This is gonna be my sweet dreams quilt under Liberty fabric. And dreams of meadows of flowers. I'm gonna have it on my bed tonight. I'm so excited. All right. All right, Michelle and Brenda are of the same mind. For anybody just joining us, we've been sewing binding on this quilt, and we're in the last leg of the journey. We're on the not really on the final stretch yet. I'll say we're on the final stretch when we're on the last side of the quilt that has to be stitched down. But everybody who's stuck it with me here has watched us start from 2¼ inch strips of fabric to sewing them together, mitered seams, and then sewing them to the quilt with the 1/4 inch seam allowance and mitered corners. And we even joined the ends with the mitered seam. Only one mishap, only one time unpicking. That's good. And now we're flipping the binding over to the front of the quilt and sewing it down to the fold of this double fold binding. I'm just giving you a recap. Maybe I should always do this. I'm having fun giving a recap. It makes me feel like I've done so much tonight. Oh, Carrie, me too. Cuddle quilts are the best kind. So I have long held this opinion. Roll your eyes if you must. But quilts are a lot of work. I'm gonna get to the opinion that I hold. Quilts are a lot of work. That's not opinion. That's just the fact. You piece them and then you baste them with the backing. That was my dog that sneezed. Lola's here. Um, and then you quilt them, then you trim them, and you um, what's after trimming? You bind them like this. And binding is not a one-step process. Binding has all these steps. We've already been at it for an hour and a half. So you've put all this love into a quilt, all with your bare hands, right? You're working on this quilt. And you're putting your thoughts into it and you're working with your hands, which is wonderful. So I think, especially if you're thinking about the person who's going to enjoy this quilt, you're like sowing love into this quilt. Don't you think? Like, I think that love remains in the quilt and it can't be washed out. So I think that, for example, when my daughter goes off to college and she sleeps under a quilt that I made for her, I think there's a difference. I think she sleeps better. I think she can feel my love. Am I crazy? Let's see here. Michelle also makes cuddle quilts, and Brenda says, Yay! She's been quilting since she's 25. You are going on 50 years quilting. Can you believe that? 50 years quilting. Okay, I just noticed that already. Um, Congratulations, Brenda. I want to be there for your 50-year quilting anniversary. Quilt anniversary. Okay, and Michelle says, don't forget shopping for fabric and cutting. Amen. So quilts take so many hours. You can't put a price on a quilt. I mean, people asking me how much to make a quilt for them, there's no price on that. I make quilts for the people I love and they get them and I don't charge because you can't put a price. Even the fabric alone is more than anybody would guess. All right. Math Geek says, that's awesome, Brenda. Almost her 50-year quilt anniversary. Oh, Michelle makes quilts for her dogs too. Actually, I have a quilt. I gave Lola a quilt. Where is Lola? She was just sneezing. So last night I was up here. My swimming room is upstairs. Last night I was up here and I was kind of doing a practice live stream so that I could make sure that all my cameras were working and everything. And I was sewing these minky cuddle pieces together. And you know about minky, you know that minky is just leaves fluff everywhere. So I think that's why Lola was sneezing because there's still puddle fluff everywhere. The elves didn't come and vacuum my studio last night. You know those brownie elves that are supposed to come and work during the night. Oh, I went off. Those brownie elves did not come and vacuum the fluff out of my studio. So Lola was sneezing and she went downstairs. Okay, I'm sewing the fold on the corner down. I'm just going forwards and backwards. That's all I'm gonna do. Okay. Just to remind everybody, just a reminder. Ask me anything. I love the comments. Ask me anything. Okay. Oh, it's hot in here. Okay, just a second. I have to go turn the AC back up again. Back down. Oh. All right. I pulled the microphone out too. Okay, can you hear me okay? So, it gets hot up here because we have a Nest thermostat. My husband set it the temperature like 76 so that when I come upstairs, I have to turn it down nice and low. And it doesn't like cool the upstairs all the time. But if I forget or after a few hours of being up here, it gets hot again, just like it did just now. Ooh. Oh, Sassy Bell, a new comment. Hi, Sassy Bell. She says, what are your favorite places to get jelly rolls and or half yard bundle? So if I know the fabric that I'm gonna get, like I have a specific jelly roll or a specific bundle in mind, then I'll Google it. And a lot of times the best price is on eBay. So don't discount eBay. And I think a lot of times eBay is quilt shops who are selling on eBay on the side. Because I've gotten lots of great fabrics off eBay. But just for like browsing fabrics, I browse fabrics on Etsy. I browse fabrics on Fat Quarter Shop. And I browse fabrics in my local quilt shop. So I love all those places. I love fabric. What about you guys? So if you want a specific jelly roll or a specific half yard bundle, Fat Quarter Shop is really good. They have a lot of stock. So does Hawthorne Threads. So does Missouri Star Quilt Company. Laura, come here. I think Lula. Let's go outside. I'm gonna text my husband really quick and tell him that Lola wants to. I know. I'm gonna text Daddy. I'm gonna text Daddy and tell him that Lola wants to go outside. Let's see. I know, Lola. She said she. Okay, hopefully he gets it. I know. Does everybody want to meet Lola? Come here. Come here. So this is my baby. Oh, this is my Lola. Look, look how cute she is. Oh, she's wagging her tail. Yeah, baby. Yeah, I love you too. I love you too. Yeah. Daddy's gonna let you outside. Go downstairs and see Daddy. Go downstairs and see Daddy. Let you outside. Okay. Um. So I have been. So we bought this house 6 years ago, and luckily, we got this house that had this nice big room upstairs because before we were living in a house that has, those homes that have, well, it's common in Florida, a living room and dining room right in the front of the house. It's like the rectangle, and my studio just got bigger and bigger until it took over my whole living and dining room. And then that was a pain because it was always messy. And people, when they walk in our house, the first thing they saw was a big old mess. So we saved up for 3 years. We started looking for a new house, and this one wasn't new. Obviously, we didn't build it, um, but yeah, we bought it mostly because it had a bonus room upstairs with a bathroom. So the bonus room had carpet, which helpful. So before we even moved any furniture up here, we got rid of the carpet and put down some engineered wood floor, which always looks messy, but it's easier to sweep or vacuum the floor than get threads off carpet. All right. So that was Michelle's comment. I was answering Michelle's question, how long I've had my dream sewing studio. And it is, I love it. I'm so happy here. I never want to move. Never want to, I mean, I'm happy living in this house. I never want to move away from this house because of this place I have. All right. Carrie Quilt said, I took over the living room of our small house. Yep, that was me. That was me. And that's okay. That's just fine. Like, who needs a living room if you don't use it except to sew? Like, your house should be just for you, for the purposes you want it for. Oh, thank you, Michelle. Lola is a bundle of love. She's so good to me. And especially when, like, I'm feeling anxious. When we have people over and I feel anxious, she just comes and sits in my lap. She's so darling. Okay. Hello, Liz. What are you doing tonight? We are just about done finding this quilt. It's some beautiful gray blue binding that is Moda grunge fabric. For a while, I went on this like, oh, he's calling me. Rosa, go downstairs. Go see Daddy. So cute. I was buying so much grunge fabric. So now I have a collection, and then I use it as a background fabric, or I use it as a binding or backing. Great for everything. All right. Since I have my walking foot on, I want to show you guys um, the minky rag quilt pieces that I'm making. Okay, so stick around. We're getting to the end of this binding, but I want to show you the minky rag quilt. Um, Jet Lu is so nice, and she says, or Liz says, she's been prepping fabric. Why? What are you making? Have you been cutting fabric, or are you a pre-washer? Have you been washing and pressing your fabric? Inquisitive minds want to know. Okay, here I go. That's the proper way. Oops. There we go. What have you been doing to prep your fabric, Liz? I have a sister named Liz. She's the one I went on the stitching. Is that 4 corners I've done or just 3? Is anyone counting? Over here. Jet Lu says, that's a lot of fabric, Liz. Yeah. It's taking you all day. Oh, I love this quilt so much. I'm so excited for it to be done. So what kinds of projects do you guys want to see me do live? Oh, okay. Here we go. Carrie, thank you. Carrie says lost track of the corners. Yeah, me too. I think I have one more corner. Okay, Penny says she's a quilter in training, still learning machine binding. Well, I'm so glad that I'm doing this tonight and you got to see. Liz said that she's pre-washing to make dark fabrics colorful for a little town quilt. Sounds adorable. And yes, that's a very good thing to do. Don't want to have all your work for nothing. Because the fabrics. Also, I also use color captures. So I don't know if any of you saw my years ago, I made a craftsy class that was a Christmas tree skirt with a jelly roll. So if you're interested in that, you can find it on my blog if you just Google Christmas tree skirt. So I made this craftsy class with the jelly roll Christmas tree skirt, and the class is only $10, which is wonderful. You get the pattern and like a couple hours of instruction. Anyway, I'm just saying this. I don't get a lot of money from Craftsy anymore because that was so long ago, and Craftsy was sold to another company that barely pays the instructors anything. So I'm just saying. Anyway, I'll get to the point. So, years ago, I made this Christmas tree skirt with a jelly roll, and I don't pre-wash jelly rolls because that would just turn into one big tangled mess. Does anyone pre-wash jelly rolls? So the jelly roll was not pre-washed. It was red and white fabrics. And then one year, luckily it was before we had presents under there, or maybe it was at the end when we're putting the tree away, the water spilled and my tree skirt got sopping wet, and I just like hung it up to dry somewhere, and then the fabrics all bled into one another. So I just put it up in our attic. I still have that tree skirt, but I'm wondering if I can put it in the wash with a couple of color catchers and see if after the fact they might save that quilt or that tree skirt. Any ideas? It was a beautiful tree skirt. All right. Penny says, thank you. Yeah, any ideas for saving fabric that has already bled into each other? would really be sad to lose that piece. I mean, I didn't throw it away. I just put it away up in the attic. So, also, who downloaded the pattern from Fat Quarter Shop? In case you didn't notice. Oh, Dawn dish detergent. Really, Liz? Liz gave me a suggestion for saving that quilt. Hey, I'll try it. I'll put some dish detergent. I'll like squirt it all over it, and I'll squirt it all over it and wash it. Um, that's a great idea. Yeah, Michelle says color catchers might work. I think I have saved something in the past using color catchers after the fact, so I'm hoping that works. I'll try anything though. Um, yeah. So, in case you're just getting here and you didn't see the beginning of this live stream, at the top of the comments, I put a link to where you can download the pattern that I'm working with for free. This is not my design. This is a quilt that I made at a retreat, and the pattern is free. The pattern was designed by one of the art gallery fabrics designers, and I used my own fabrics. I didn't use art gallery fabrics, but the pattern for it is free. So if you scroll to the top of the comments section, the chat box, then you can click on the link, which will take you to Fat Quarter Shop, where they offer the pattern as a free download. I'm pretty sure the pattern is also available on Art Gallery Fabrics website, but it was kind of hard to find it, and I did find it really fast on Fat Quarter Shop. So that's okay. Last corner. We're getting to the last corner. Okay. Use my little stiletto here to help me fold this nicely. I'm gonna cut extra threads because I don't want to worry about them later. Let's see here. Idea from Liz. She says hot water in the tub, keep soaking until the water comes out clean. Yeah, that's a good tip. That's a really good tip. Carrie said wash it with dish soap until it comes out before putting it in the dryer. Synthropol. I've heard of that. I've heard Synthropol before. Okay, good thing it's in the comments. I'll go back and check that out later. Yeah, I'm not gonna put it in the dryer while it's all red and white and all blended, all like all together. Okay. Looks like right here, my seam allowance is not perfect. So stretch it a little bit. I love a good stiletto. This stiletto is good because this part is called a stitch eraser, and you can actually, after you've unpicked stitches, you can go like this and it will kind of pull the little threads out of your fabric. So I do like this one, and I also really like my stiletto by Annie. It's really nice. Feels really good in your hand because it has a wooden handle. Anybody else a stiletto user? All right, we are now on the final leg of the journey, that final stretch. I believe this is the final stretch. I believe. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. This is the final stretch. Yay! And then really quick, before everybody goes away, I want to show you my minky quilt. My minky rag quilt. It's so fuzzy. It's going to be so soft. And it's just one layer. So once I sew the pieces together, no binding, no quilting, it will be done. I don't have this on my website. I don't know if I'll even blog about it because I just cut the pieces using AccuQuilt and then I'm sewing them together. And the pieces were all from scraps. All right, let's see here. Yes, I agree, Carrie. Don't remember how I got anything done without a stiletto. It's so good for bag making and quilt making. There we go. I'm gonna very neatly backstitch. There we go. All right. Check my threads here. This is the starting thread. Okay. Are you ready to see it? Are you ready to see it? Here we go. I got it out here past the camera without knocking everything on the floor. Okay. Ta-da! Hold on, I'll back up. Ta-da! I love this quilt so much. So pretty. It is Liberty. Anyway, I can't help but show it off for you guys. Okay, now I'm gonna go get those. Hang on for just a second. I'll put the quilt here for you to look at. I'm gonna go get those minky pieces. So what I want to show you, and I have the walking foot in already, so it's perfect. Okay, you guys are all so cute. Let's see here. That's all how we all get there by and by. Penny says, thanks for the tip to use the stiletto. You're welcome. Just like Harry, I don't remember how I got anything done without having a stiletto. It's also great for bag making and clothing, everything. Thank you, Yvette. Yvette said it's beautiful. Dropping my microphone. I really hope like you guys can hear me okay. Okay. Thank you, Yvette. Carrie, thank you. Matthew, thank you. Yeah, I think I picked a good binding fabric. Thank you, Shelly. Thank you, JetLu. Definitely stilettos. Yay, sis Brenda. Thank you, Michelle. Brenda loves it. Okay, before you go, let's put my iPad down there. You all got to see my chatting with my husband. Okay, so I've started this minky quilt that is these. This is an AccuQuilt die that cuts the fringe on your rag quilt pieces before you even sew them together. So I started working on this. They're really small. This is minky fabric I that sometimes on my long arm I use minky fabric on the back of the quilt. So this is just, when you're on a long arm, you need to have a lot of fabric around the edges. So this is just, so I just cut these scraps. Holy cow, I've got a lot of these here. Where are my unsewn pieces? So I just started using my Acme quilt to cut my scraps into these pieces. And it's actually really fun. Now I did need to train myself. Ooh, I'm gonna change the top thread. I do not want this gray on top. So I'm going to switch to a neutral color. We use this grayish neutral color. All right. That didn't thread the first time. Oh, it doesn't want to thread because I have the walking foot on. Isn't that weird? Oh, my eyes are not what they used to be. I do love the needle threader on this sewing machine, but it doesn't work when I have the walking foot on. Okay, there we go. Thank you, Brenda. Okay, so we already finished binding the quilt for anyone who is starting now. And now I just want to show you this really fun thing I'm doing. And I'll get a few more blocks done, a few more pieces sewn together. So this is minky fabrics that I cut out with a special rag quilt block. I'm using an AccuQuilt die, placing them wrong sides together. And I'm not sure if I need to back stitch, but I did. And so that means when you are done with your rag quilt, you don't need to cut all the fringe like you would with a normal rag quilt, because it's already cut. So yay, yay me. And because I'm using this minky and because I live in Florida, I don't want any more layers than just one layer of minky. So what do you think? What do you think? This one's already sewn. Let's see, did I bring enough pieces of to sew some together? A bunch of white ones. Here we go. So again, I'll place these wrong sides together. It did take me a few times to get used to doing it wrong sides together. I was sewing it wrong, unpicking, sewing it wrong again. So I'm really excited about this quilt because, for one, it was cut entirely from scraps, so that means it was free. And then number two, all I have to do is piece these pieces together, and then it's done. Binding, no basting it with batting. I mean, you obviously probably could. It would be tricky to bind around all the fringe or to quilt. I guess you could just quilt in the middle of the pieces. Yeah, okay, let me think this through. If you were trying to do this with regular cotton fabric, I know this. I have a rag quilt tutorial. You would baste these pieces together with a couple layers of fleece in the middle because not fleece, a couple layers, well, you could use fleece, a couple layers of flannel fabric in the middle because that makes really fluffy rag quilts. And then you would baste all the layers together and then sew them together. And still, no problem. If you want to know, go to sewquilty.com and put, oh, put rag quilts in the put rag quilt in. I'm tired. You can tell. You can tell I'm tired because I just sewed these together wrong. Just after I was talking about it. Where's my unpacker? I was just talking about sewing the pieces together wrong, and then I did it wrong. Okay. I can't find my search bar. It's probably under all these fluffy pieces. Now I have to unpick them with this little thing. And I backstitched. Isn't that the way things go? Don't get mad. Just what I really wish is I could find my other unpicker because it is wonderful. It's okay. It's okay. Can you hear me? All right. It looks like everybody left when I messed up. Did everyone leave because I messed up? Look, I'm unpicking. Messing up is not the end of the world. That's why we love sewing, because we can mess up and it's still okay. So I'm gonna fix this piece. This is just a little bit where there we go. This is not a show quilt. Okay, wrong sides together. Wrong sides together. I love sewing. Really love sewing. Okay, here we go. Wrong sides together. Okay. Beautiful, beautiful and fuzzy. Look at all this. All right, one more, just one more. Then I'm going to clean my sewing machine and say goodnight. So, one more. Always good. I mean, not that I always do it, right? But I always, in the morning when I start sewing, I always love it if I have cleaned my sewing machine when I stop, because then I can just start going and not worry about is it getting too dirty under there. And also, if you have a Bernina like me, they are so thirsty. They always want oil. So, um, that's all I'll do tonight. I love it. I love it. Okay, so let's clean. Let's clean. I'll show you how I clean my Bernina. First, I'm going to wipe off all these fuzzies off my table. Then pop off this plate. Well, I think I'll take the foot off. I know you're supposed to take the foot off every time, and you're supposed to take the needle out, but I don't always. So, oh no, I'm gonna. I took the foot off. I'm just gonna clean. I do have another brush somewhere around here that's a little bit bigger, but it's not showing itself right now. So, these fuzzies out. I'm gonna give you a better view. Clean all these fuzzies out. Never use canned air on your sewing machine. It just blows the fuzzies way back in deep, and then you can't. And it just makes it worse. Doesn't matter if you have a beginner sewing machine, you've been sewing for years. If you have an expensive sewing machine, don't use canned air, and don't ever blow into your sewing machine because there's micro droplets of spit, or maybe you will spit in your sewing machine, and that will just make it worse. Okay, I cleaned out the bobbin case. Oh, look, just a tiny bit of bobbin thread left. I think I'll just set that aside. Set that aside now. Figure out what color of thread I'm going to use in the morning. All right, underneath, I'm not going to show you. I'm just going to take out this hook lace. If you know, you know. If you have a Bernina, you know, and hopefully you know how to put it back in. So I'm going to put some oil here. This is the Bernina oil pen that they don't make anymore because I guess so many people like it, but I love it. I did get kind of a lot of oil in there this time. So wipe out the extra scrap. And then I'm gonna peek down here and brush out any fuzzies that are underneath. Not very many this time. I'm gonna put 1 drop of oil here. My little pen's almost out. I wonder if I can refill it. Okay, so that's done. I'm gonna take this piece, put it back in, lock it in, and then I would put my bobbin case and bobbin back in, but since I'm almost out of my favorite color of thread here, I'll put it in. And I'll just no, in the morning, sabotaging myself. I'll run out of thread as soon as I start sewing in the morning. And then I put this little thing back on. And I'm done. This is such a good habit. So every time that I've live streamed in the past little while, since I can remember, and that's just the last little while. Every time that I've live streamed in the last little while, I have cleaned my sewing machine at the end because I know people are watching. So I put a tampon setting. And that means tomorrow when I start sewing, it's all ready to go. I'm so excited. I'll sew a little bit on this scrap here. See if I put everything back together properly. So, oh, yeah. Okay, let's get my piecing foot on because that's what I'm most likely to be doing tomorrow. And tell my little machine that I've got the piecing foot on. And let's see how this is gonna go. So clean machine, clean machine, especially a well-oiled one. So good. All right, everybody. A little bit of water. I think I ate some fuzz. Thank you. Oh, hold on, hold on, hold on. I have a little thing. A little thing for you. All right. See you in my next live stream. Make sure that you follow me either on YouTube or Twitch and make sure you enable notifications because we're going to do this again and I can't wait. And next time, I don't know if we're going to keep working on that mystery quilt or do some embroidery or something else fun. I'll think of something. I have so many projects up here. I'll think of something. So have a wonderful night, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me. And I just love you guys. Thank you. I have the best fans in the world. Have a good night.